Today, Bill Cosby was found guilty in his sexual assault retrial. He was found guilty on 3 felony counts of aggravated indecent assault today in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. This comes from last June when his last trial was declared a mistrial, and it was pretty surprising for a lot of the people involved. Afterwards, some of the women in the courtroom were seen sobbing, hugging each other. I think we have video.
Constant was a member of the women's basketball operation. I'm sorry?
Guilty on all 3 counts.
Shep, we now have the verdict. Bill Cosby, guilty on all 3 counts. I repeat, Bill Cosby is guilty on all 3 counts. That is the indecent aggravated felony assault. Guilty on, that means that they found him guilty on penetration without consent. They found him guilty on penetration while Andrea Constand was unconscious and also while she was intoxicated. Shep.
Wow, an incredible turn of events.
So this was regarding Andrea Constand specifically, but it hinged on a lot of people because, as you'll remember, there were 50 accusers against Bill Cosby, though Constand's trial was the only one that resulted in a criminal trial. So we're talking a little bit about what happened in the courtroom. That's, of course, not filmed. But Kristen Fedden, who was the assistant district attorney, in her closing remarks, saw that Bill Cosby seemed to be smiling and laughing, and she pointed out, he's laughing like it's funny, but there's absolutely nothing funny about being stripped of their capacity to consent. On the other side, we have Kathleen Bliss, Cosby's defense attorney, or one of his defense attorneys. And she was saying, when you join a movement based primarily on emotion and anger, you don't change a damned thing, which is why each single case must be examined on its merits. All of the evidence must be weighed. She's referring specifically to the Me Too movement in this. The attorney, Kathleen Bliss, went on to say that she spent most of her closing argument urging the jury to discount the accounts of the 5 supporting witnesses. One was a failed starlet in her characterization who slept around, another a publicity seeker. She also characterized Constand herself as someone with consistent money issues who was particularly doing this for the money, targeting a poor, sad, lonely old man. To which her side said, no, he's the con.
Yeah, this is, if you don't mind, I can't help but jump in right now. This is exactly the reason why a lot of women don't come forward when they've been victimized in this way, because it means that your character will be called into question while you're in court. And it's an incredibly difficult thing to go through if you are in fact a victim of any type of sexual misconduct. And I really do commend the women who are brave enough to come forward and go through this process. And that's not to say that the women who didn't go through it aren't brave, but it's just an incredibly difficult thing to go through. And in order for any justice to be served, you need to take him to court. And unfortunately, you have to sit through those disgusting arguments that are going to be made by the defense.
Thank you. That's exactly right. The most disgusting thing is that they disparage those women who are sexually assaulted, those women who are preyed upon. They disparage them, they call them liars, they call them opportunists. It's disgusting. And they should apologize beyond the judgment. This guy's going on ice for 30 years or whatever. Screw him. He abused these women, and many. This one woman who actually got to the threshold of a trial. But remember, the statute of limitations is up for scores of others. As Anna says, there were upwards of 50, and those are just the ones that stepped forward. It is a sad fact that this system allows for the muddying of the reputations of these women, and then after a sound judgment is reached, there's no apology from the other side. It's truly sad for me today to having witnessed what had happened in this trial. It was bittersweet. The sweet part is seeing this guy finally brought to justice, but the bitter part is all the damage he did to the reputations of those women, or tried to do to them along the way.
I mean, that was the crux of Cosby's lawyers' arguments, was that to discredit each one of these women, to discredit this movement, that she kind of did characterize them negatively. She did say questioning an accuser is not shaming a victim, but she did characterize them as opportunists, money grubbers, failures in their careers and their lives, I think that is shaming. Or maybe it's not shaming so much as it is slandering.
Right, it's exactly. And also keep in mind, this is not a civil lawsuit, this is a criminal case. And these are women who are brave enough to testify in a criminal case where they're not going to get money. They're hoping to get justice, and luckily in this case they did. What I also found interesting was that the prosecutor was concerned about Cosby potentially being a flight risk and asked that the judge not grant bail. And Cosby lost it. Do you have the details on that by any chance?
I don't.
Okay, so Cosby lost it and started cursing at the prosecutor. The judge ended up deciding to grant bail, and so the judge does not see him as a flight risk. But the argument by the prosecutor was that he might have a private jet and he might try to flee. But again, the judge didn't buy that, and so he will be able to post bail and wait until he gets sentenced. He's apparently facing 10 years for each charge.
Yeah, he did surrender his passport just as a fact, so he wouldn't be able to leave the country, one wouldn't think. But the other moment, and I love that Kim mentioned this because it's really a key moment during the summation, when Cosby did laugh. That moment is a great moment to seize if you're a prosecutor. And that prosecutor did seize on it and turned to him and said, as Kim was noting, you may think this is funny, Mr. Cosby, but there's nothing funny about this. And that is a moment that can pierce through right at the end of the trial. And I'm clearly something did, and I would imagine that didn't hurt her case.
Exactly.
So this case was special in that, or more special, because last time they only allowed one other accuser to talk about her dealings with Bill Cosby. This time there were 5 others, and this was to show that Cosby had a pattern of doing specific things to his victims. They included Janice Dickinson, who's the former, I think she's the first supermodel, Janice Baker Kinney, Heidi Thomas, Shalon Lasha, and Lisa Lotte Lublin.
Right.
And so Lasha was actually crying through a lot of her testimony and actually called out to Cosby across the courtroom after describing, because this happened when she was 17. He took her to his hotel room to help her with her modeling career. And she called out to him and said, "You remember, don't you, Mr. Cosby?" in the middle of the courtroom. It was very emotional. But those women seemed to be elated with the result.
And I was actually concerned about Janice Dickinson's role in this case, because even though she did testify against him, during, I believe, cross-examination, she had said something about how she made things up about Cosby in one of her books. And so they questioned her credibility in making allegations against Cosby as a result. And so that made me worry because, just because one person might have embellished things for her book doesn't mean that the other victims are making things up. I didn't want that to undermine what the other victims had gone through. And luckily, based on these 3 convictions, three charges that he's now convicted of, her testimony in her book did not undermine.
Well, they did target her book because they said, you didn't say this happened in your book. And then her publisher had to testify, we didn't say it for legal reasons, which makes perfect sense.
Right, exactly.
They did establish this dance that Cosby did with all these women. His MO was the same, and he did abuse his position. He did abuse the reputation that he had as being this fatherly figure and as a show business icon. And then he did this awful thing, to drug and rape all these women. And again, it just is one woman that saw justice. But in a sense, many of his victims saw justice today as well.
You just watched the video by the Young Turks, the home of the revolution. If you'd like to get the full show, come join us and become a member. TYTnetwork.com/join.